everybody, and you're all very welcome to this very special Oyster World Rally webinar, where we're going to be focusing on the islands of Tonga, Fiji and Vanuatu. Whilst everybody is joining the call, you can see here on the screen, this is Oyster 82506 Enzo in Fiji, running down the inside of a reef. Now, I'm curious, on the screen there, you'll see a chat box. Would be great to see where you're dialing in from. Great, we've got Chris from Toronto. You're very welcome, Chris. So in the chat box there, just put where you're dialing in from. It'd be great to see where everybody is from the world. London, Slovakia, Matt from Bournemouth, Alan from Beaconsfield, Louis from Ireland, but Munich, wow, where they go, Monaco, Cork, Venice, Palma, fantastic. French Alps, very nice too. Oyster Newport, Cambridge, Guernsey. Well, in the chat box there, please feel free to ask any questions of either myself or the team, and we will be able to answer them as we go. But we also do have a focused question and answer session at the end of the webinar as well. So just whilst everybody is joining, Cornwall, Sweden, Massachusetts, Chile, Hampshire, Israel. Wow, fantastic. Well, it's great to see you all this evening. Brighton, Denmark, fantastic. Okay, so what are we going to talk about this evening? Well, we're going to focus on the South Pacific, and we're really inviting you to join us on a journey through the islands of Tonga, Fiji and Vanuatu. Now, I'm not alone. Well, I should introduce myself first. So for those of you who don't know me, my name is Paul Adamson. I'm the Chief Commercial Officer of Oyster Yachts. And I was also privileged to be the skipper of Oyster 88501 in the first Oyster World Rally. So I've done this trip and I know it very well, and it's absolutely stunning. So it's a privilege to spend this evening with you to take you through all the tips and the tricks that I've learned on my way around the world. Now, alongside me, we have Ali Smith. Say hi, Ali. So,
hi, everybody.
So Ali has also circumnavigated the globe. However, she did it the wrong way round when she sailed on the first British Steel Challenge yacht race in 1992. Now, after that, she then ran the next around the world yacht race the wrong way, which was known as the British Steel Challenge with Sir Che Blythe. And then she worked closely with Sir Robin Knox-Johnson, running the Clipper around the world race. Now, she's also run Open 60 campaigns for the Vendée Globe for Mike Golding. And before joining Oyster, she ran the Maiden Restoration Project and promotional world tour for Tracy Edwards. And now she's in Oyster, a part of the team, and she's running the Oyster World Rally. So we're privileged to have her on board. Alongside Ali, we've got Millie. Millie, say hi to everybody.
Evening, everybody.
We can hear you, Millie. So Millie is our events lead, and she organises all the infamous oyster regattas. And let me tell you, if you've ever been to an oyster regatta, you know how infamous and lots of fun they are. And Millie is responsible for all of that. She's also Ali's number two. And she's also an extremely accomplished sailor too. She's a world champion in dinghy racing, and she sailed on the 2017 Oyster World Rally on board Enzo, that yacht you saw running down the inside of the reef there in Fiji at the start of the webinar. So that's Millie. Now, alongside Millie, we've got Eddie Skugel. Eddie, say hi to everybody.
Everybody.
There's Eddie. And now Eddie has sailed around the world twice, and he's also sailed south to Antarctica and way beyond that too. He's the fountain of all oyster knowledge, and he set up and ran the first Oyster World Rally, and he leads the technical team within Oyster. So you've got a team of circumnavigators here with you this evening, and we're here to serve you and to answer any questions you may have. So let's move on then. So what are we going to look at specifically? We're going to look at the islands of Tonga, Fiji and Vanuatu. And here you can see we're now deep in the South Pacific. And when we started the Oyster World Rally webinar series, we started in Antigua and we've made our way. We've gone through the Panama Canal. We've talked about Galapagos and the trip from there across to French Polynesia. And now we're on the next bit, which is we're leaving Bora Bora and we're going to sail across to Tonga, then through Fiji and Vanuatu, so deep in the South Pacific Ocean. So what does that look like and where is it? Well, if we jump onto Google Earth, and if I can drag the right screen across, here's our beautiful planet that we live on. And where we're actually sailing, and if I've queued this up right, this will all work well, is if I zoom in here, you're going to land in the South Pacific. Here's French Polynesia here. Here is Bora Bora up here. And we're actually going to sail right across, past Niue and across to Tonga here. And we're going to do this passage here. Now, this passage on the rally is quite interesting. Effectively, we are in the trade winds. It's about 5 to 6 days passage. It's about 1,300 miles at sea in the southeast trades. Now, let me show you a little tool that we've shown you before, but it's worth showing you again, which is windy. So on here, you can see this is the live weather, exactly what is going on in this part of the world's oceans at the moment. So just to orientate ourselves on the chart, we've got Papeete here, this is Tahiti, and Tonga all the way over here. So Eddie, what are we looking at here? Tell us a little bit about it.
Well, it's the weather systems start to get a bit more complex on this side of the Pacific because you get the low pressure systems coming up between New Zealand and Australia. So they can disrupt the trades a little bit, and that's kind of what you're seeing here. You're seeing that low pressure area it's kind of popping up from the south. Bearing in mind the low pressure areas in the southern hemisphere turn clockwise. No, I beg your pardon, anti-clockwise, opposite to the northern hemisphere. So, and you can see the blue bits there, and there are cams and stuff like that. I'm just trying to recognize it in the islands there. It's just
we would leave the wind behind us. It's a nice downwind run, but it's quite interesting to see how obviously this weather system would develop. Now the other thing with windy is here, guys, is you see if I go to the bottom here, I can advance it, so we can actually have a look at what this passage would look like. And it looks pretty light wind, right, Eddie? Pretty light wind.
It's pretty light there. So that's kind of unusual.
It
actually,
is.
but you see that low is coming up there. It's kind of it's sucking all the air down. Where it would, normally, well, I would say like 3 times out of 5, if you like, if that's a way to put it, 60% of the time, the wind, you'll have a kind of more settled southeasterly trade there. But those lows pop up and almost on a regular basis from the south, as I say, between New Zealand and Australia, and they kind of disrupt the pattern of the trades in that area. And I'm sure there's a bit about that in the weather part of the manual, and I'm sure Chris mentioned that on the weather seminar as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's quite interesting. Great tool this way, and you should go over to the side here. You can put different things on. So the currents with you as well. These are the live ocean currents, what's going on. You can look at sea temperature. There's all sorts of things, cloud coverage, etc. But a great useful tool for you to be able to passage plan with and look, especially if you're forecasting in terms of where you're going to be every 24 hours. So here you can see this is a light weather trip, that's for sure. So I wouldn't be surprised if we were making this passage now over the next few days that there'll be a bit of motoring in the middle. But that means great fishing. So that would be quite an interesting trip right now. Now, of course, what's quite interesting is on the way across there, we actually, if I said to you, how do you lose a day of your life? And maybe you've had a day that you do want to lose, but how do you lose it? Well, the fastest way to lose a day, Eddie, tell us all about it. It's this thing, right? What are we looking at here?
Yeah, that's International Dateline, and it's perhaps not what some might think it is. It's actually to do with time rather than making new friends. Yeah. So yeah, you need to factor that in on the trip, and you kind of lose a day on the way over. Now you see the dateline is kind of squinting. It gets a bit more interesting up towards Kiribati and places like that, but not normally it would be on the 180. But for political reasons, it's been doglegged off to the side around Kiribati. Then off to the east of Tonga, and that actually splits Samoa in two. There's 3 islands in Samoa, There's American Samoa, and then what used to be called West Samoa, which is now just called Samoa. But the date line goes between American Samoa and Samoa. So although you can almost see American Samoa from Samoa, it's in a different time zone. So anyway, piece of useless information there. So yeah, remember to set your to adjust your watches.
Yeah, absolutely. And so this is the way to lose a day of your life, because of course, as soon as you cross the date line, the day is advanced and it's gone forever. So it's quite interesting. Now, there's also another really interesting part of this trip as you transit across. I don't know if you spotted, but on the Google Maps there, you've got this very clear, very dark definition line. And that's quite interesting. And actually, what we're looking at is, well, there's a few things. We're actually looking at a huge ocean trench, which we're going to talk about in a minute. But I just want to just quickly focus on Tonga. Just to say that Tonga is made up of lots of islands. They're spread roughly north to south for about 600 miles in four groups. Tonga Tapu is the administrative center. The Vava'u group is by far the most beautiful and most popular with yachtsmen, and that's where we sail on the Oyster World Rally. On the approach to Tonga, you will also cross the deepest part of the ocean on the route, the Tonga Trench. And Eddie's going to tell us a little bit about the Tonga Trench. So how deep is it to start with, Eddie?
Well, it's kind of interesting. It's it was first discovered in 1952 by a survey ship called the Horizon. And at the deepest point, called the Horizon, deep after the ship that discovered it, you can see there it's 10,823 meters deep. Now, in old money, that's about 35,400 feet.
Right. Okay. So that's the level a commercial airliner would fly, right?
Well, yeah. If you can imagine, commercial airliners fly between 30 and about 39,000 feet. So the next time you're sitting on your boat in a nice blue sky and you see that little speck in the sky leaving the vapor trails behind it, that's the depth of the ocean in the Tonga Trench. But the part that we would cross, or the rally would cross, it's only about 9 kilometers deep. So, yeah. Now there's some other notes there I put down. It is the deepest trench in the southern hemisphere, and second only in the world to the Mariana Trench, which is a little over 11,000 meters deep. Now, if you take into account that the average depth of the Pacific Ocean is about 4,200 meters, it's still the deepest kind of average ocean in the world. The trench itself runs in a kind of arc down towards New Zealand and kind of joins up with the Kermadec Trench, and it's about 49 miles at its widest point. So it's quite a wide canyon, and about 1,600 miles long, and it's caused by the oceanic plates moving together, the tectonic plates. So it's caused mostly by subduction, where you've got two plates come together and one gives and the other kind of sort of folds under it like that, and it drags this down. Now, the other interesting part about this, not only is it the deepest, and this is interesting, it's also the fastest. Now, subduction.
What do you mean by that, Eddie? What do you mean by the fastest?
Well, the plate is moving in the northern part. Subduction is occurring at about 24 centimeters per year. Now,
okay.
At the top part and about 15 at the bottom. So that means Nui, that little dot that you can see there, is 6 meters closer to Tonga than it was when I was there 25 years ago.
Okay? 6 meters, that's a long way, Eddie.
So, and that means if those who can measure and do a little bit of arithmetic, in about 1 million years, Nui will disappear into the Tonga Trench as the subduction continues. So amazing. Not only is it one of the deepest, it's also one of the fastest developing subduction regions in the world. And it's really quite an interesting subject, because if you see the bigger map, you can see it curving round. And that's what kind of generates all the volcanic activity in Tonga, Fiji, and Vanuatu. It's all the plate curves round, so you'll see it a bit later. And it's, if you Google it all, you'll kind of see that it's classic subduction environment here. It creates that's what gave birth to all of these islands, was this the fact that the Earth's crust is, or the lithosphere is folding under and taking a dive back into the mantle of the Earth. So don't worry about it. This is all kind of happening about 300-400 kilometers below the surface. So it's not like you're kind of going to bubble up. But there is volcanic activity in the area. But nothing that's going to affect the at sea at the minute, but sometimes you get plumes of pumice floating to the top from volcanic activity on the seabed, which is quite unusual.
Amazing. And so effectively this plate here is pushing this way and underneath the Australasia plate here.
Yeah, it's the Pacific plate is moving westwards and going under the Indo-Australian plate, sort of kind of like that. If you understand what I mean.
We can see it here. Yeah, I understand. Cool. So if we actually dive down to the bottom of the ocean, this is what we'd be in, some massive canyon effectively. So what are we looking at here, Eddie?
Well, this is part of a survey, a later survey. You can see that the date on there, and the submarine pilot that was on it as well. So this is in 2019, and he actually found the deepest part. So they went down with it was a remotely controlled vehicle. It was a piloted vehicle, so it wasn't tethered. And they found their way to the deepest part, and that sort of plots the route that they took when they got to the deepest part of the bottom of the trench. This part is actually a bit to the south of Tonga. It's not the part of but is a bit north of this, but the pressure here is unbelievable. It's about 15,000. I worked it out. What did I say? 15,500 psi at the bottom here.
15,500 psi.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay.
And the temperature is very cold, and obviously there's no light because light can't penetrate that far. But the temperature down here is about 2 to 3 degrees C. So it's just a couple of degrees, 2 or 3 degrees above freezing. So it's any other notes on that? No, that's about it.
That's about
it. You know, when you're sailing anywhere, I used to love to research all this kind of stuff. You know, the places you're sailing, not only the people you meet, but the canyon, the sea floor that you're sailing over, the whole environment, including the meteorology and the geology and all sorts of. There's so many interesting things to read up when you're traveling. So here, Paul, you see there's a representation, a graphic representation of what Mount Everest would look like.
If it was trenches at the bottom,
in the bottom of the Tonga Trench. Yeah.
Isn't that amazing? I mean that puts it into perspective. And of course, we would be yachting across the top here on our beautiful Oyster, blissfully unaware of all this topography underneath us. So yeah, and you know, that's something definitely that Eddie just mentioned there that we loved as we sailed around the world in the first Oyster World Rally, which was being able to learn all these kind of interesting facts and really understand the places you are going to travel to and things like that. Now, speaking of facts, we arrive into Tonga, and Millie has got some amazing Tonga facts to share with us. So over to you, Millie.
I have indeed. Thanks, Paul. So Tonga is a Polynesian kingdom made up of 170 islands, of which 36 are inhabited. The island nation is scattered over a vast area of ocean around 700,000 kilometres squared, which is about the same size as Texas. Tonga is the only Pacific nation not to be colonised, and from 1900 to 1970, Tonga had a British protected state status under the Treaty of Friendship. Tonga cut official ties with the UK in 1970, but remains an active member of the Commonwealth. It's illegal to conduct business, play sport, or even do chores on a Sunday in Tonga. And most of the local village shuts down in favour of family, church, resting and eating. Captain James Cook nicknamed the islands the Friendly Islands after attending a lavish feast and festival in his honour. Little did Cook know that the feast was actually planned as an ambush to loot his ship. However, the operation was abandoned just before the feast started. And every year, hundreds and hundreds of humpback whales travel 3,000 miles from Antarctica to breed and give birth in Tonga between June and October. And it is common that if a woman only has sons, she will raise at least one of them as a daughter to help out with chores such as cooking and cleaning. These boys are called whakaleiti. Whaka means in the manner of or like, and leiti means lady. There is no stigma attached to this, and whakaleiti mix easily in society, and this can also be a lifestyle choice today. And finally, there is a disappearing island in Tonga. In 1867, a new coral reef was found, which later grew to 50 metres in height and 2 kilometres in length. in 1894, the island went missing, but reappeared again 2 years later before disappearing again. It has appeared and disappeared another 2 times since, and it is currently in its hiding phase. So it'll be interesting to see who can find it on the next Oyster World Rally. Back to you, Paul.
Absolutely, and anchor off it and wake up and like, where's the land gone? Where's the land gone? Okay, cool. Thanks, Millie. So moving into the Kingdom of Tonga, as I said, it's made up of these 4 different island groups, and actually where the rally goes to is Vava'u in the top here. Now, Vava'u is, I tell you, an incredible place to go. And the reason is there are so many anchorages in such a small space. Now, what do I mean by that? Let me drag over the Navionics chart viewer so we can have a look at that, so we can zoom in. So effectively, you'll make your passage here over the top of Vava'u, and you'll come in through this passage here, and then you'll travel up and you'll go to this place here, and this is Neafu. And interestingly, look at the depth in here. It's actually an incredible deep natural harbour and a beautiful place to arrive into. But if I zoom out just a little bit here, you can see all of these different anchorages, and they're all different. But actually, if we get the measuring tool to give you an idea, so let's do that. Let's measure from there to there. You go. That's pretty good. So that gives you a bit of scale on this chart here. So that's 8 kilometers there. So as you can see, there is a huge amount of different anchorages and variety. The other thing about this place is this particular anchorage here. I can remember anchoring in here. We anchored probably about here on Lush with the draft. But you see this area here, some of these coral fans are literally hundreds and hundreds of years old. And one of the most beautiful things about Tonga is in the water, it's pretty much untouched and undisturbed. And that's something that Eddie, you reminded me of the other day, that's really important, right, that we take care of the sea there. Agreed?
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Sorry. Yeah, just be careful where you anchor. You don't want to drop the hook on like pristine coral, then have the chain dragging all over the place, destroying it. You know, that it's just, you'll find that's a big no-no all the way around. You've got to be really careful where you drop the hook, that you're not going to destroy all the stuff that you've come to see.
Yeah, absolutely. And one thing that became very apparent when we arrived there is every day at 8 o'clock in the morning, the all of the islands broadcast on VHF radio and update each other in terms of the news and kind of what's going on between the islands, and they give you such an amazing welcome in Tonga. It's incredible. And when they knew we were there, they were like, well, we hear the Oyster World Rally is in town. Please come over to the island, come and meet the kids in the school, come and have a Tongan feast. And, you know, we had these most incredible experiences, which we're going to share with you in a little bit. But as you can see here, from a chart point of view, there is lots of interesting places to go and anchor and explore. It is a fantastic place along the rally route. So jumping over to our next slides, as I say, one thing about Tonga, it's the people. They're amazing. They're beautiful. They're so friendly, and they welcome you in a way that, quite frankly, I've not experienced in anywhere else in the world. And if somebody said to me, Paul, if you could go back to just one place on that amazing world adventure, where would you go? For me, Tonga. I'd go back there in a heartbeat. Now, interestingly, to actually get to Tonga, if you aren't traveling on your Oyster and you've got to fly there, it's a bit of a trek, right, Eddie? So you fly down to Auckland, but then you fly up on quite an old aircraft.
Yeah, I think they took it off. It was we flew into Tonga Tapu, and we're waiting on the hopper Tonga Tapu to fly up to Neafu, and there was this DC-3, like, you know, a 1944 jump out the paratrooper DC-3, getting the engines wound up on, and they were taxiing it over. I thought, God, I'd love to have a fly in that, you know. And it was Chatham Airlines, and little did I know this was our aircraft to fly up to Neafu. So that was a really memorable flight. I wish I'd had some photographs ready for that one, but you know, it was very basic inside, as you can imagine. Tail dragger, Amazing. Yeah.
Yeah, and you know, I mean, that's the islands all over. It's you know, really interesting experiences. So what you can see here on the screen, this here is like 6 in the morning, going for a kite surf, and all the local kids come out. It's like, who's this guy, and what on earth is this inflatable thing that that we were going off to kite surf, and you know, just fantastic experience. Another thing about Tonga that's really special is when you go there, you must go to church on a Sunday. And the reason I say that is because there is very few parts in the world that actually you can go and hear great grandma, mum, and daughter, stroke granddaughter, all singing, and dad is in there somewhere, all singing in 4-part harmony. It's absolutely beautiful. And here you can see this image here was a Sunday. Myself and Audrey went to this church here, and it was just fantastic, and it was beautiful experience to have that. And actually the elders of the village, of which these two ladies here kind of said to us, well, would you like to come round for Sunday lunch? We were like, yeah, of course, we'd absolutely love that. And they took us back, and in Tonga, they on Sunday they cook traditionally, which is where they cook in an oven that's called an umu, and an umu is basically an oven that's underground. And so they've dug a hole in the ground. They've wrapped their Sunday lunch, which was I think it was like pork and taro leaves, etc. That they wrap it all up, and then they smoke it and cook it underground slowly, and then on the top is all these palm leaves. And so they invited us round, and then all the palm leaves came off, and then, you know, we had this beautiful Sunday lunch with these people who are amazing. And what's interesting is there's no running water or electricity in these villages. Now there is one television, and it's a black and white thing, and they all cut with like a coat hanger as an aerial. And the biggest thing that's ever on that year is when Tonga is playing rugby, because that's when they tune into the outside world. The Tonga rugby players, they're absolutely there. So you know, again, you know, certainly what we experience is when you get to Tonga, the people are so amazing that they welcome you in as though they are your own. Another one was where they were like, okay, well, guys, you should come round tonight for a Tongan feast. I was like, great, what's a Tongan feast, and what's on the menu? And they were like, well, he's on the menu and runs a pig runs across the village. Felt quite guilty about that, but actually then we went that evening and had this most beautiful, memorable experience that really I could be there right now and be back there. It was absolutely fantastic. Another thing we do along the route is we throw incredible parties. And Tonga, Eddie, do you remember this? Was one hell of a party. And here on the bottom right of the screen, you can see all the Oyster World Rally dinghies. And it's probably quite good. You can't see actually what's going on behind those trees, but it was one hell of a night. Now, Eddie's going to tell you a few experiences that he had in Tonga. So, Eddie, this looks pretty cool. What's going on?
Yeah, these are traditional Tongan buggies, of course, and we had a traditional Tongan fun in them. So there's lots of things to see and do. Not only some diving and snorkeling and sailing, there's also stuff to do ashore as well. And this is a great way to see around the island, because you get to go to places you'd never actually walk to or go to by yourself anyway. And they're guided tours, so you're not going to get lost or anything like that. And it was a lot of fun. You see Debbie in the back, she didn't want to sit passenger because she's not that kind of girl. She likes to kind of be in the driving seat as well. So yeah, definitely do the buggy tours if they're still going there. That was a load of fun.
Yeah, fantastic. And Millie, tell us about this.
Yeah, so there are some incredible caves in Tonga. This one in particular really just was such a special day for me. It was this cave in particular is called Swallow's Cave, and it's not actually very far from our base in Tonga on the rally. So this cave in particular is 15 foot deep and 20 foot wide. Once you get inside, it's actually 60 foot deep, and you can dive down there and explore and have a look around. And in terms of when you should visit it, it's best to visit in the afternoon because it's west facing, and you can just motor in your dinghy and tie up and have a look around as well. And that picture on the right hand side, that is of Oyster 655 Proteus, and that was on the first Oyster World Rally back in 2013. And you can get really close and drop your hook right in the entrance to the cave there.
Yeah, fantastic. I can remember when we went to there on Lush. It was absolutely incredible. So moving on from Tonga, and I'm sure you're all looking at going, okay, I want to go to Tonga, Paul. Well, you also need to move on and sail to Fiji, or Bula Bula, which is one of the happiest places in the world. And Millie will share with us some Fiji facts.
Yeah, so Bula, hello from Fiji, everybody. Fiji is made up of 333 islands, and the two largest are Viti Levu, which is the home to the capital city Suva, and Vanuatu Levu. And Fiji's oceans are home to almost 4% of all the world's coral reefs and are inhabited by over 1,500 species of marine life. Around 40% of the Fijian population are of Indian descent, and Fiji was colonised by the British between 1874 and 1970. And between 1879 and 1916, 600,000 Indians were given free passage to Fiji in exchange for work on the sugar cane plantations. Now, it's possible to be in two different time zones at the same time when on the island of Tavanui, as Fiji is spread across the international dateline. And the root of yakona bush is ground up and strained with water to make Fiji's traditional drink, kava, which is super strong, as I'm sure Eddie and Paul will explain in a minute. When entering a village, custom dictates that you must bring a gift of kava root and participate in the 3,000-year-old tradition of kava drinking. Now, wearing a hat and sunglasses in a Fijian village is a big no-no unless you are the chief, so we don't recommend you doing that. And many Fijians raise their eyebrows as a non-verbal way to say yes, so don't be offended if that happens either. And with enough produce to fuel Willy Wonka's chocolate factory, sugar is a huge agricultural export for Fiji. The country produced a whopping 160,000 tonnes of raw sugar in 2018 alone. And they really do love rugby union in Fiji. Its men's team is ranked 9th in the world, and the sports-mad nation has about 80,000 registered rugby players, which equates to around 1 in 10 people. Back to you, Paul.
Thanks, Millie. Interesting facts for Fiji. Now, let's talk about kava. Kava's this stuff. Dirty dishwater, or as the Fijians say, I mean, I'm sure I'll be told off for saying that, but it tastes like that. It's quite interesting. It doesn't really do a lot. I don't know, Eddie, if you had a different experience on it, apart from your gums go numb, and that's about it. But everyone's very chilled, and in fairness, it is a local tradition, so it's quite fun to sit around with the elders and drink kava, right, Eddie?
Yeah, it's still a very traditional. The outlying islands are still very traditional. And you know, if you arrive at any of these islands, you're supposed to ask permission to proceed of the first person you meet. Otherwise, I think it's quite rude. And say if you're in a bay somewhere, you're supposed to ask permission to fish as well, because it'd be like somebody coming into your house and taking food out your larder. That's the kind of way they would view that. But around the bigger islands and the cities, there's not as much formality in the traditions. It's more like the Western world, but certainly in the Lau group and the outlying islands, the Usawas and stuff like that, they would expect you to, you know, follow tradition.
Yeah,
but yeah, but the kava is quite important. That's you're supposed to take good kava root and present it to the village elders as a traditional gift, so that you know they'll look favorably upon you on your visit, so they give you permission to kind of walk around. And like Paul says, it doesn't feel intoxicating. It just kind of makes your face numb. But anyway, I prefer beer, frankly.
That's absolutely right. So slightly different to us Westerners, I guess. But yeah, so quite an interesting place. Now, when we look at Fiji as a whole, with a bird's eye view, then these are the kind of destinations along the route. One is Vanuatu, then we go to Savu, then sail down and round to Denera, and then out towards Vanuatu from there. Now, what's interesting with Fiji, and that's something that we want to share with you on this Oyster World Rally webinar, is actually in Fiji. Well, in fact, pretty much most of the Pacific, and you know, the Caribbean, I'm sure most of you sailed around the Caribbean as well, is coral reef navigation. You need to be on the money with this. You absolutely need to be on the ball because, of course, littered all over the oceans are these bommies, are these living coral heads that are growing, that are popping up all over the place. And it's literally a place where you could be motoring along in 7, 8, 9, 10 meters of water and come to a dead still on a bommy, which is almost like a little cliff under the water or just below the surface. So obviously it's something you need to be very aware of. And there's 5 kind of golden tips that I use whenever I'm skippering a boat. And the first thing is use your eyes. Now, what do I mean by that? These are your best navigator's tools. And of course, these days, we're all conditioned to kind of use screens and to look at electronic navigation aids, which are all useful things, as are paper charts as well. But ultimately, your best navigator's tools that you own are here. They're your eyes in terms of looking what's going on. It's very easy to get distracted with other things on board, and your head and your focus goes there and not actually on where you're driving the yacht. So using your eyes is number 1. Second golden rule, which I'm sure you've heard, is approach with the sun behind you. Now, why do we say that? Just purely because it lights up the coral in front of you, and therefore you can actually see the differential of color on the water. And so that will indicate where these things are as well. Third is proceed at a safe speed. What's the safe speed? The safe speed under the coal regs is a safe speed relative to the conditions you're operating in. So obviously, if you're charging about at service speed at 8, 9, 10 knots, operating around coral, not a good idea. Slow down and have enough speed so you can make way and you've got full control of your yacht. But also think about, am I really kind of going a bit too quick here for if I need to stop quickly because I spot a bommy in front of me. So safe speed is important. And of course, it's very easy on our yachts to actually go much quicker than we realize because they're so quiet when they're motoring or when they're sailing as well. Fourth thing, post lookouts. Don't just use your eyes, use other people's eyes as well. And so getting lookouts up on the bow, up on the maximum beam on the yacht, up by the shrouds, or even up in the rigging. I'm sure you'll have seen that in yachting magazines where somebody goes up high and then they can look down in front of the yacht, again with the sun behind them, will help them see what's going on in front of you. And the fifth thing, which we're going to show you now, is beware of over-relying on electronic charts, especially in the South Pacific. Now, of course, if you're in Europe, as I know many of us are, if you're in the States, which I know many of us are, Australasia, you know, places that are well charted, then actually we get very used to being able to look at the screen, and actually where the boat is on the screen is actually where you are. Now, interestingly, Eddie sailed with me from where did we go from, Eddie? Over to Fiji. Where was it? Tonga to Fiji.
Left Tonga to Fiji. It was a couple of days. Yeah,
that's right. A couple of days on board, and we actually arrived at Vava'u about 4 in the morning, and we were waiting for sunrise to then before we were looking to cross the reef. But let me show you what our chart plotter looked like. Now, let me just explain what you're looking at here. You are looking at the chart plotter of Lush. This is where we are. You can see the wind angle. You can see where the yacht is heading. And at first glance, you might have looked at that and gone, well, they're running onto a reef, aren't they? But actually, we weren't. Interestingly, because actually the yacht really wasn't here. The yacht was really here in the passage. Now, that's interesting. So why is that? Now, this is a classic example of why you need to be aware of not over-relying on electronic navigation aids. Because, of course, what's happened here is you've got to remember that in the South Pacific, a lot of these charts were actually surveyed hundreds and hundreds of years ago. And also, because of lack of traffic, they're not necessarily kept up to date, or errors are not spotted as well as maybe they should be. And so here, this is actually an error in the electronic chart. The datum in the chart is out. And so it actually placed the yacht further south, about a mile south than actually where she really was. So if you looked on this chart, it would be very easy if your head was in the screen to literally drive down this purple line on the transit. But of course, if this yacht here, us, we're here, then we'd actually be up here. Now, interestingly, what you've also got, you've probably looked at this and you've gone, well, okay, well, what are these purple stuff here? Now, a good tip is to have your radar on, and then you can overlay your radar onto your electronics. Now, radar is a great bit of kit because it can do what you can't, which is it can see in the dark and it can see in fog. And also it's showing you what is there because of course it's transmitting out from the yacht, taking a reflection back and forming a picture from it. GPS is coming from a satellite above and triangulating where you are. But here, radar is showing you really where the land is. So let me help you out. Oh, we've flipped back a slide. Let me help out here. This piece of land here, this echo on the radar is actually here. And this echo here is actually here. And so by using the radar, it was very clear. And I was really confident that actually, if you look at where Lush was aiming, she was aiming just inside the point there, hey ho, on this transit here. Now, interestingly with this, we obviously use paper charts. Paper charts are really important and you must have them on board, because one thing that was great is when Eddie and I were looking at the pilotage first thing in the morning, what we spotted was the transit on the chart, on the paper chart, and we found it on the land. And that was our first guide to go, okay, we can see it. Remember, your best navigator's tools are these things. And so we could see it and we could line the boat up on the transit. Then we looked at the electronics and of course it was like, that's quite interesting. And, you know, I took a picture and a number of them because I thought, you know what, someday I might use this and explain something about coral reef navigation, and it may help somebody whenever they get down to the South Pacific Ocean. So there you go on that. Now here's the fleet behind us. We were the first in. They were coming down from the north. So that's just effectively what you can see. You can see the guys here that were coming down from the north. Maybe they were looking at something slightly different to what we're talking about. So there they were coming down there. And look how disconcerting this can be. So this is us coming in and actually, again, remembering that actually the yacht is here. It's about a mile north is the real position of the yacht. But interestingly, we were about to cross the land. But again, using the radar echo, really helpful. And so we could really see where to position the yacht. Another thing is you do have navigational marks here, but the top marks aren't necessarily what you'd normally expect them to be. So this pole may not even exist anymore, but it was there with an interesting top mark on the top. And then round we come over the top of the headland. And of course, here we're going over the land. But again, look at the value in using the radar overlaid on top of the paper chart, because I could rely on the radar because I know it's seeing what I'm seeing too. Now, the beauty of all this is, again, remember to, you know, use your eyes, remember to proceed at a safe speed, remember to post lookouts, enter with the sun behind you, and be aware of over-relying on electronic navigation aids. And if you keep those 5 little tips inside, then what happens is you can navigate in pretty much anywhere carefully. And trust me, the rewards are fantastic because that's the bay. And there is the entire fleet now in Vava'u. I believe that's how you pronounce it. And one thing that's very cool about the Oyster World Rally is normally you would check in from a customs and immigration point of view downwind in Savu or on the main island as well. But Oyster being Oyster, we arranged for customs and immigration to join us up here, upwind, and therefore the fleet could arrive into the Lau group, into this beautiful place here. So Eddie, tell us what's going on in these photos here.
Yeah, the top left, that's the Bay of Islands, which is just across it. It's kind of a little bit south of the entrance that you pointed out earlier on the radar. The photo to the left, to the right of that, I'm not sure that might have been part of the dinghy safari.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, so the bottom right is the dinghy safari. One of the Phelps brothers took the whole fleet, or everybody that wanted to go anyway, on a dinghy safari around all these little coral islands and stuff like that. It was really fascinating, and everyone enjoyed it. The bottom left is, I'm ashamed to say, I don't remember the name of that village.
Village, Eddie. I remember it.
Yeah. So that's where they hosted us on for the first party anyway on in Fiji. That was in Vanuatu, and it was absolutely spectacular. It was really actually humbling how welcoming and what they'd done for us. They'd been practicing for months. You know, they heard we were coming, and they'd been practicing for months for their dance routines and the welcome and the feast for us. It was fabulous.
It was incredible. And you know, when we talk about Fiji and the people and the places, they're beautiful people, and they are so happy. Buller, and they've got massive smiles and they welcome you in. And Eddie's absolutely right that actually here you can see Eddie and Debbie here. You can see this shelter here, they actually built for us, and they built to welcome us. And here is the village elders. And you know what's really interesting about in Fiji is it is as the human race was meant to be. So i.e. tribal, and so everybody respects the elders of the village. And this is Eddie here, and this is the carver ceremony. You can't quite see it here, but you can see the carver route here. And effectively you go and make the offering, and then you're welcomed into the village. And Eddie's absolutely right. The feast they put on for us was just spectacular, wasn't it? It was fantastic. And the other thing that was amazing is the children put on a little show for us too. And let me show you what they've been practicing for months. So that was all put on for us with the kids of the village. And as Eddie said, it was massively humbling. In fact, we remember what one of the guys from the village, who really looks like he probably played rugby for the Fijian Tonga team, or the Tonga team. I'm getting confused now which islands we're on. You get the gist. Big rugby guy. And he was there and kind of spoke at the end, and he was the son of one of the elders of the village, and he totally broke down. He was so emotional and so grateful that actually we had chosen to pull in and stop at Dalconi village. And that just hits you right there. You just think, oh my God, I mean, how amazing is this? And also I can remember sitting in Fiji at another place as well. And one of the beautiful things about the Oyster World Rally is that there's a start date and there's a kind of finish date in terms of we'll meet you back in Antigua. But in between, our support teams are obviously there for you to come in and avail of. But also, you have the ocean to play in. So i.e. it's free cruising, which means you can really go exploring. And one of the places that we explored on our way down is after we went to Savu, we were sailing past this island here. And I said to Audrey on board, I said, hey, we should just pull in there. It's going dark. There's no need to go down. We were actually bound for down here to spend the night here. And so we're like, actually, let's pull into this place. And this place is called Makukai Island. Now, of course, we were well briefed. We had carver route on board. And so we knew that we could go and anchor. We couldn't fish, but we needed to go ashore, find the elders, meet the elders, and do the traditional carver route ceremony with them. And what was amazing is what unfolded was probably one of the most memorable experiences of my life. And I'll share that with you now. And the first thing is that here are the elders of the village, and I'd just given the carver route, it's here, and they welcomed us in and they said we could stay, which was fantastic. But unbeknown to us, they were actually preparing for the Minister of Fisheries to arrive as their guest of honor. And so they invited us to join the party. And here we are in the evening, and here are the officials over here from the Fijian government. And I love this picture because I can remember that moment. I could go back right now because I felt just so grateful and so oh my God, this is such an incredible moment to be sitting here with these people experiencing this sunset in this moment, being welcomed in. Or even when the elders of the village go, "Bulla ball, life is simple. Just focus on everything that's great and everything will be all right." Oh, and by the way, have some kava in some whatever accent it was. But I always wonder what this little child thought as well as they saw me sitting there with sun cream all over my face. And we were lucky enough because, of course, for the Minister of Fisheries, they put on a bit of a show too. And again, we got a lovely little show from the children. And that's one of the things that the Oyster World Rally is all about, is really having these incredible experiences. And that was so humbling and so amazing, that moment, that actually then it got better. They made us the guest of our honours. And here I am with this thing that came off the Minister of Fisheries. They must have thought we were going to put a load of cash into the island, whatever it was. But it was incredible. And we were treated so well and made to feel so welcome, that it's just such a moving and sublime, beautiful experience that life had to offer. And we never would have experienced that if we hadn't just been able to free cruise and pull in on our oyster and check out what it's all about. So that was very, very cool. The other thing, of course, is when you're a king, then of course you have to dance like a king. So this is sun's gone down now. I always remember feeling uncomfortable when it came to glamour to go dancing. That's why I And I remember thinking in that moment, this is beautiful. These people, I look back now. That's what the Oyster World Rally is all about. Now, it's not just about amazing experiences and being able to, pull in to islands and meet the local people, but it's also amazing diving too. And in Fiji, there's plenty of places you can dive with big sharks and go and see beautiful coral reefs. If you're a surfer, you could also go and surf the famous Cloud Break. It's a world famous surf spot about 3 miles south of Vanuatu Island. Left Reef Pass is regularly voted one of the 10 best, most challenging waves in the world. And like many tropical reef pass breaks, Cloud Break tends to get faster and shallower quicker. So if you're not up for surfing, you can also watch it by boat. So again, a beautiful thing to be able to do. Now, once you leave the stunning islands of Fiji, you will sail across to Vanuatu. And Millie is going to give us some funky facts of Vanuatu.
I am. So there are more than 100 languages found in Vanuatu, making it per capita the world's most linguistically diverse country in the world. And the US forces used Vanuatu as a base during the Second World War, and there were a number of world-famous wreck dive sites, including the HMS President Coolidge, which Eddie and Paul are going to chat about in a minute. And Vanuatu invented the precursor to bungee jumping, which is, you can be seen in the middle image on the screen now. And this is known as land diving, which is a ritual performed by the men of the southern part of the Pent Coast Island. Now, these men jump off wooden towers around 20 to 30 metres high with 2 tree vines strapped to their ankles. Though it was always an annual event, the tradition has developed into a tourist attraction and now happens weekly between April and June. And Vanuatu is also home to Mount Yasur, which is in the bottom left of the screen, the world's most accessible active volcano. The glow of the volcano was apparently what attracted Captain Cook to the islands in his journey in 1774. And Vanuatu is also home to the dugong, or the sea cow, which is a close living relative to the manatees, which is endangered in many other parts of the world. And Prince Philip of England has a special relationship with the people of Vanuatu, and there is a religious sect that believes him to be a divine being. On Queen Elizabeth II's visit to Vanuatu, the local people had seen the respect given by the colonial officials and concluded that her husband, Prince Philip, must be the son referred to in their legends. Back to you, Paul.
Fantastic. Thanks, Millie. Well, that's a great place for Prince Philip to go, I'm sure, over to the island of Vanuatu. And it was an amazing place for us to arrive in too. Now, one thing that was took our attention was where we were anchored. You'll see this little helicopter here that sits on its pontoon. And of course, what I'd like you to do is join us for a quick flight, in fact, because we jumped on it. And it was a great way in about 20 minutes or so. We've cut this down to be a couple of minutes to literally have a quick flight around Vanuatu and see what's going on. You can see the World Rally fleet here. You can see Lush there, the grey yacht with the black mast. And Vanuatu itself, again, there's lots of coral reefs. There's loads of things to do and loads of places to anchor and see. And the helicopter ride was pretty exhilarating, not just to get, you know, some great imagery of the boats, but also, and it'll cut in a second, they take you down surfing between the rainforest on the island. The video is about to cut into that in a second. So you hang a right, as we're doing now, and there we are. And you go down this valley. The video doesn't do it justice, and if I left the sound here, you'd hear us all screaming on board. But it was incredible to basically surf our way down this valley, and you can see the thick vegetation and the rainforest of Vanuatu. And then at the end of the valley, of course, there's a river down there in the bottom, and of course the rivers always flow to the sea, and you pop out on the ocean. And you realize how beautiful and blue and lots of places there are for you to cruise. So this was a really great little fun trip to do, to have a quick view of the island. So away we go. Let me just advance a little bit more. So you go, you see, you pop out the end there, and you see, look at the beautiful blue water and all the places that you can go and sail. Now, another place you can go in the Vanuatu group is this place. And Eddie, what are we looking at here?
Well, that's the volcano in Tanna. I think it's the most visited volcano. I think, as Millie said, it's the most visited active volcano in the world, and it really should be better regulated, because it's actually very dangerous, because it spits sort of fairly large boulders out now and again, and people have been known to die after being struck by debris popping out the volcano. But anyway, people continue to do it, and I believe you can. I think you can clear in Tanna now. I think Tanna is the second bottom island in the group.
Yeah, absolutely. And quite a few yachts went to Tanna. They anchored up, and then they walked up the volcano. And the boats that went were like, it is a like amazing experience in terms of that you stand on the side of this volcano, and just the vibration from the rumbling of the lava below goes right through you. And as Eddie says, it spits out massive boulders. So health and safety would have a field there. There is nowhere in the world you can get as close to a volcano as you can on the island of Tanna. So well worth a visit. The other thing as well is diving is world class. So this is the President Coolidge. It's currently known as the largest, most accessible wreck dive in the world. It's particularly interesting because of the diverse range of features which can still be seen, including the Lady of the Holy Grail. There she is. And the lady is the one treasure that every diver wants to see. The lady is an old bas-relief statue of an Elizabethan lady riding a horse with a long flowing tail. She's wearing a red and gold dress with a wide white ruff framing her delicate features. It's a long-held diver's tradition to kiss the lady, although some divers say the tradition is actually to kiss the horse. We'll leave that to them to work out why. And the SS President Coolidge was a luxury liner that became a gigantic scuba divers playground after it struck a mine and sank off Vanuatu during World War II. So as you can see there, the diving is pretty amazing. The other thing that's interesting, this here is where you saw the video with the helicopter and you saw the yachts anchored just ashore there. This is the local market. And something that Audrey would say to me, I'm sure that Millie would agree, is that when you really want to meet the locals, the place you go is to the markets, and that's where you go and you really meet the locals and what's going on. And this was a really interesting place. The families basically have their allotted times on these tables to come down, and they literally come down from the hills, from all that rainforest, from all these remote little villages, and they bring their produce to sell. And let me tell you, it's tough to spend $1 there and not come home with huge shopping bags full of fresh fruit and amazing things. And the local markets were fantastic, and that is something about the rally that you'll really enjoy. And the other thing is this, and these are Eddie's shots. So Eddie, that looks very romantic on the top left there. Where are you there?
Yeah, that's actually great. That's the Havana Hotel up in Havana Bay on the north of the island. It's if you want a break and to be pampered, that's where to go, because it's how do they put it? It's not suitable for children, I think they say. I mean, that's not, there's no darkness in that. That is just, they don't have children there.
Adults only.
It's adult friendly. It's where you go if you want a bit of peace and quiet. You can have dinner out on the jetty there if you want. Debbie and I didn't stay for dinner. We were doing the research at the time, but we did have lunch there at that table on the top left there. And we thought, this would be great to come to, but it's not. I guess most oyster owners could afford it. They put it that way. It's not an economy hotel, but sure, well worth a visit. Just go there for lunch.
Well worth a visit. Fantastic. And so once we have arrived and you stocked up at Vanuatu, then of course you launch out towards Australia and the Great Barrier Reef, which is our next webinar. But we're going to go into our Q&A now. But just before that, just to say that if you've watched this and you've been inspired and you're interested in potentially joining us for a future Oyster World Rally, then we would love to hear from you. And all you need to do is, after the webinar, visit the Oyster World Rally part of the website, hit the button and get in touch with the team here, and they'll be delighted to speak to you about future plans. But anyway, that's that. So question and answers, Ali's going to run that for us. So Ali, what have you got for us this evening?
Hi, everybody. Well, I've been quite busy while you've been talking. Lots of questions coming in, both the chat box and the Q&A box. So I've tried to answer as many as I can during the webinar so far, but we've got a few that I thought would be really interesting for the panel to answer, if that's okay. The first one comes from Susan, and she would like to know, what fish would you expect to catch in sort of the region of Tonga, Fiji, Vanuatu, and what basic kit would you take on board to catch those fish, and what do you do with the fish once you've caught them?
Kill it and eat it.
Yeah. Said by a true warrior. Fantastic. Yeah, so great question, Susan, and great to see you here this evening. So fishing, this is a really important part of this trip. And so what I would say is you need to get lots of lures, because those fish, they will take you down, meaning that actually you will snap lots of lines and you will lose lots of lures too. So fishing for us was a great part of our ocean crossings, in terms of we ran a little competition, so fish against lush, it was called. And basically it was how many lures the fish took, and we never landed the fish, and how many fish we landed, and then subsequently did what the warrior on the call says, which is dispatched him or her, and then put him or her on the plate. So what I would say is, from a lures point of view, you want to really think about, you know, getting high quality equipment. You want rod holders on your push pits, and also think about the strength of the line, and also the lures that you take as well, because you will lose quite a few. You also want to think about landing the fish and how you get them on board, and so therefore you need a gaff to do that. That's basically it's a pole with a hook on the end, and so you can hook it and get the fish on board, and you'll develop a system to how you best land the fish and then dispatch them as well. One thing that was a really good piece of advice that somebody gave me years ago, it's absolutely true, is try not to get hook envy. What do I mean by that? The bigger the hook you put out the back of the boat, the bigger the fish you're going to catch. And especially when you're in the Pacific, those fish can be really, really big. So things like marlin, 1,000-pound marlin, all those things you should be releasing and not trying to land. They're endangered species. But if you get a reasonable size hook, you will get some beautiful fish. My favorite fish to eat and catch is the dorado, or dolphin fish, that you may know it as, and they're the beautiful greeny blue fish with the golden or the yellow top, and they're a beautiful white fish, and they taste amazing. So dorado dolphin fish, and in Tahitian they're known as mai, which of course you may well have heard. So it's all the same fish. So that's one fish. Another fish you may well catch is the wahoo. They're fast fish. They're basically big mackerel, really nice meaty fish, great for fish curries, etc., and things like that. Tuna, you'll catch lots of tuna as well, so you get some beautiful tuna. And if you're like me and you're into a bit of tuna sashimi, make sure you've got the wasabi on board and plenty of soy sauce, so you can literally have fresh sashimi on board when you catch them. Now, in terms of getting them on board, as I say, you'll develop a system. You need to obviously think safety first, which is you to stay on the boat, and therefore the fish is not more important than you on the boat. So obviously think about that and the conditions, the prevailing conditions that you're in. So when you're thinking about landing the fish, make sure you don't go over the side following the fish. It's basically what I'm saying there. And then what we would do is when we got them on board, we had a set in the lazarette that we could open and bring straight out with a big chopping board on it, a filleting knife, and so we could dispatch the fishes off to heaven as quickly as possible, and then we would literally gut the fish and fillet it on deck and do all of that stuff on deck. Once it was on board, then it would go to Audrey, who then would take it below, lay it all out. If we hadn't filleted the whole fish, she would cut it into steaks or to cut it into fillets, whatever she would do, and then she'd vat pack the fish, and then it would go into the freezer. And we were pretty good at, you know, once the freezer's full of fish, there's no point keep catching fish. So as much as the guys on board, we all wanted to fish, when the freezer was full, we wouldn't take the fish out of the ocean unless we were going to eat it. But you will have an amazing time fishing on board. Eddie, have you got anything to add into any of that?
Yeah, I would recommend that you put a lanyard on the reel.
Good point.
Because as you say, the fish are pretty big, and you could end up, you know, it'll take your rod and your reel and then just end up spanking you with it. So just be careful.
Yeah, that's right. You lose your rod and your reel. It's true. Honestly, those fish, like we thought we were well stocked up for the first Atlantic trip. We stocked up in the Canaries, and I don't know, about a third of the way across, we had lost all the lures. So then it was like, oh, we're gonna have to be a bit inventive. Now you can be inventive, and if you've got hooks, you can make really good little squids and lures with pink marigolds, gloves, you know, the rubber gloves, and you can shred them and make some good lures. Pink, yellow, anything that had tassels that actually you can drag behind you and creates a bit of aeration, gets the tuna interested as well. But it's a good point, Eddie. Make sure you tie your rod on, that's for sure, because some of the fish are massive. They are massive.
Yeah, because you might lose your rod, you might just piss it off, and it'll just, as I say, just give you a spanking with your own rod if you're not careful.
Absolutely. And in fact, one of the things I like, the biggest fish that we hooked into was about 24 hours out of Mauritius, and Mauritius is it's Indian Ocean, so I've jumped an ocean here, but it's cool. I'm sure you'll enjoy the story. So we hook into this big fish, and we'd lost many fish the day before, and Al, our engineer on board, is a great guy. And it was Al's birthday, and so we knew we'd caught a big fish, and so we're like, well, we can't either not land it or at least get the fish close to the boat. Anyway, an hour goes past, still no fish, still on the end of the line, but Al's still fighting the fish. Anyway, advance. It ended up that it was a 7-hour fight to get the fish alongside the yacht, and we actually turned south. We were heading south at 2 knots, and we ended up about 29 miles off course. And we had basically caught this massive marlin. I mean, it was huge, the one that got away. And of course, the fact that we'd gone off course is a really good example about the support that we actually give to the Oyster World Rally fleet, because Eddie here, who was on the call, actually contacted the yacht and was like, Paul, are you okay? Because you're kind of 9 miles off course, and you're heading south at a couple of knots. Is everything okay? And also, I was like, yeah, it's absolutely fine. But that shows you that wherever you are in the world, we're kind of watching and making sure you're okay wherever you are. So there's that unseen guiding hand of Oyster. But that fish definitely did get away. Poor old Al on his birthday. And I guess probably the funniest thing was we arrived into Mauritius, and Eddie and Debbie were there on the dock to take the lines. And they threw us some local beer, which happened to be a can of blue marlin. And so Al did finally get his marlin. It just happened to be in a can, and it was a beer. But there you go. Fishing, it's a great part of the trip. So embrace it and go for it. You'll love it. And it's a great way to get fresh food on board as well. So there you go, Ali. Sorry, I went on a bit there. No,
that was brilliant. I want to be there. I want to be catching fish. Incredible. Okay, so we had quite a few people asking questions about, is there anywhere to stop between the passage from Bora Bora to Tonga? And Alan Brooke quite kindly came in and said that there was Niue, or an atoll called Palmerston Atoll. And I didn't know if either you or Eddie had been to those places and knew if they were great places to stop or places to avoid.
So great question, Alan. Great to see you on the webinar. So if there's one regret I have of the Oyster World Rally was I believe, Alan, we were sailing past you on Palmerston. I think you were on Palmerston, and you came onto the VHF and you were like, Paul, get across here now. Don't carry on. Come and anchor off here. We're having an amazing time. And we didn't, because we needed to get a flight out or something. I can't remember what it was, but we couldn't divert. That's my one regret, because Alan's absolutely right. From the story that he told after, it was a beautiful place to stop. And I believe there was 2 families that lived on the island, and they were welcomed in, and they had a really stunning time. Eddie, I'm sure you can add on to that, since you've been around that part of the ocean as well.
Yeah, I haven't been to Palmerston, but I've been to Niue. But I believe Palmerston, the population there was founded by an English seaman and 3 local women who decided he wanted to live there. And anyway, as I believe most of the population are descended from, I mean, more guys must have appeared, obviously, but you know, I'm not sure if Alan was there to contribute to the gene pool or not, but he raved about it for a while, and it was a great visit, I believe. And he had some great pictures. Niue I've been to, and yeah, that's got its own character as well. It's basically the tip of a mountain just sticking out of the sea. So anchoring is quite a challenge. When I was there, they had mooring buoys down, and you picked up a mooring because it was just too deep to anchor.
Yeah.
And I think now they have, getting ashore is a bit of a chore as well, because when I was there, I'd say it's 25 years ago, you couldn't leave your dinghy because it would just get wrecked on the against the wall. But I believe now they've got a derrick on the quay where you can winch your dinghy up, and there's yellow parking spaces along the dock where you can actually park your dinghy on the dock while you go ashore. And it's certainly worth going ashore. There are a lot of Kiwis and Australians live there now, and there's some nice hotels. And I believe that Nui is the smallest independent nation in the world, and I think it's a protectorate of New Zealand now.
Yeah.
So it's certainly worth it. I think they called it, when the first Europeans who went there, they called it the Fierce Island, because the word must have got around about what Europeans did, and they fended off the first European sailors that arrived there, and they were called it was called the Fierce Island for a while, and obviously they got friendlier. But probably once they built the airport, I guess. Paul?
As you do. Thanks, Eddie. Yeah. So the answer is absolutely well worth the stop. I didn't. That's the only thing I would say that I should have got.
But just remember, I should
join Alan for sure.
I should just remind you there that Nui is moving at 24 centimeters a year.
This is true. This is very true. This is very true. So time is running out. You need to get there before it's under the ocean.
You've only got about 1 million years.
They've only got 1 million years. Fantastic. Okay, thanks, Eddie. Okay, Ali, next question.
Great, and we've got a question from Roger Middleton, which I think is quite an interesting one. Is when you go to the islands and you bring with you the carver route to present to the elders so that you can explore, where do you get that carver route from?
Good question, Eddie. I got asked from you.
Yeah, well, the answer to that is exactly what Paul said. Well, we got the agent in Fiji to send a load of carver route to Tonga, along with the charts, because we got Fijian charts sent to Tonga as well, so that you don't run on the reef. So he sent us a load of cava over as well. So the boats arrived kind of armed with the right stuff. Otherwise, you can buy it in the markets and stuff like that once you do get ashore. But traditionally, you should present some cava when you get there. So we'll organise for cava.
Oh, we've lost Eddie.
You've got some when you arrive in the Lao group, because there's just no shops there. Well,
okay, thanks, Eddie. Great. Okay, Ali, over to you.
Okay, well that's quite a good answer actually. I think also I suppose you probably can find it in local markets as well. So if you are at the local market and you find some stock up, so at least you have some on board that you can use if you have a unscheduled stop somewhere. So that would be my little bit of input.
Absolutely. And, just to add into that, Ali, is when we went to Makakai that time, they really did appreciate us having the carver route and finding the elders and asking permission and going through the ceremony. So it's definitely the way to go for sure.
Great. And I've got a quick question about diving. Which do you think is the best place for diving? Is it Tonga, Fiji, Vanuatu, or amazing that you can't really choose?
Well, this is the thing. Everywhere you go, they'll tell you it's the best diving in the world, and that's how I'd sell it to everybody on board. Come on, it's the best diving in the world. Gosh, it's all unique. It's all different, and it is all stunning. It's really hard to give one particular place. Normally, what happens with diving, or certainly from my experience, it's more the wildlife you encounter on the dive that certainly blew me away. When we were in Tonga, the beauty of Tonga is snorkeling. You only need to snorkel, and it's only because most of the life is in 4 to 5 meters. So actually, you've got all the colors, you've got all the visibility. As I say, the coral fans are hundreds and hundreds of years old, and the locals don't really get in the water and kind of snorkel or disturb them. So actually, you've got beautiful snorkeling and coral reefs in Tonga. Go to Fiji and you can do some big shark dives where you are literally next to a tiger shark and another shark and a hammerhead and whatever it may be. That's pretty interesting in the water when a tiger shark swims past you. So that was pretty amazing. There's also a place in Fiji called Namana, which is south of Savu, which is basically they're two, I don't know what you call them, they're like sea turrets. I think that's the way best to describe them. They're like two tall towers under the water that come up to about I think the top of them is about 2 meters under the surface. So it is a navigational hazard, but they go down quite far, 40, 50 meters, I think. And basically when you do the dive, you twist around in between them. You do like a figure of 8 around them, and as you descend, there's all the different life there. So that was a pretty incredible dive. And Vanuatu again, you know, you've got so much variety and things to see. So everywhere you go, it will be the best diving in the world. That's all I can say. That's for sure. Okay, Ali.
Right. Yeah, thank you. And I've got a question from Roger that's still about diving. Is it a good idea for an oyster owner on the rally to think about having a compressor on board to fill your air tanks, or is there usually dive shops and places available to fill your tanks or hire tanks, you know, when you get to the islands?
Okay, so this is it's very much an owner's choice. What I would say, Roger, it's completely up to you. So we did have a dive compressor on board Lush. We didn't really use it that much, and the reason we didn't really use it that much is wherever you go, I'm a big believer in using a local dive guide to actually take you around. Of course, I don't know the area, and safety is number one, so therefore we'd engage with the local dive schools to give us a guide who would then come and pick us up from the boat. And quite often they would come with their dive boat, with their air on board. And, you know, we just had our kits, or our BCD, our snorkel, mass fins, etc., regulators. And then we would use their tanks and their air. So we didn't have to use our tanks. So it's completely up to you. The only thing I would say is if you do have a dive compressor on board, you absolutely 100% need to maintain it. You 100% need to know what you're doing with it, and also be aware when you're charging the cylinder and the exhaust of your generator and things like that, you know, because it can you can, you know, put impurities into the tank. So it is completely up to you. I'm on the fence. As I say, we didn't really use ours on board Lush. But, you know, I'm sure that there'll be people on the webinar here who would swear by having their dive compressor on board. So that's an owner's choice, I would say.
Thanks, Paul. And those owners that have compressors on board become very popular.
Yeah, well, the other thing they can be very unpopular as well, because the last thing you want in a nice quiet anchorage is a dive compressor running on the boat, you know, 20 odd meters away all afternoon. So yeah, if you do have a compressor, just, you know, spare a little thought for the other people in the anchorage. And just to further on what Paul said, when I worked in Miss Molly, we had a dive compressor on board, but we had a pipe that we used to pull up the backstay as a snorkel. So the pipe was well above the boat. It went about 15 feet into the air, about 5 meters up the backstay on a halyard, so just to ensure that none of the exhaust fumes from the generator, because obviously we had to run the generator to drive the dive compressor, just to make sure there was no exhaust fumes got inhaled into the dive compressor. You know, do a course on the maintenance, because, you know, getting a bad fill, it could actually ruin your whole trip.
Yeah, absolutely.
I don't want to labor too hard on it, but, you know, a bad fill could be fatal. So just be careful.
That's why, you know, we would use the local schools. And to be honest, at the end of the dive, when you're tired, I didn't want to necessarily be charging the bottles up on board. It was handy just to use the clean air that comes from ashore with the, you know, we could jump on their tanks. They had plenty of air, etc. Also, as well, it gives you a lot more space in the lazarette. But, you know, you may obviously want to take the kit. So there may be divers on the call who are very like, I would absolutely have my compressor. No issues with that at all. Just as Eddie said, the snorkel high, maintenance, and just make sure you know what you're doing with it, I guess. So Ali, over to you. What's next?
Oh, we've got another interesting question, actually. Somebody's noticed that oysters are not all white hulled, as in they've got different colour hulls. Some are blue, some may be white, some might be grey. Does this affect when you're in the tropics, you know, how hot it is on board, or is it just, you know, it doesn't matter? What do you think?
Eddie, that's one for you, I would say.
Yeah, well, the darker the hull is, the hotter the skin of the hull will get. I mean, a dark blue hull can get up to like 70 or 80 degrees C when you won't be able to touch it. So it's not the best thing for the tropic. They look great, but they're high maintenance. They tend to go chalky after a few years. If you're going tropical, you're best just to leave the hull white or a light color. I think Lush was light grey. You didn't have a problem with the light grey, I don't think. That was okay.
That was okay. It's pretty
Yeah.
hot though. It is hot, you know,
Yeah.
but you know, it does make the boat a little hotter, but you know, it's not an issue. But obviously, it just means you're going to be
Leave it white.
air conditioning more, you know, or yeah, deck house windows open and ventilating the boat.
I would say if you do want to colour your hull, you're better to vinyl it. One, it's quicker and cheaper, and you know, if you change your mind, but you can peel it off yourself, you know. So there you go.
That's absolutely true. That's absolutely true. Great, thanks, Eddie. Ali, over to you. Next question.
Yeah, I think we're down to one last question really, which is quite an interesting one. It's maybe a question for Eddie. We've got Justine asking a question that when we visit all these different islands, obviously they're, you know, different nations, they have different currencies. You know, how do people manage that? You know, do you take dollars, US dollars, or is it English pounds, or is it euros, or how does that work? Do they all take all sorts of different currencies, or do they use their own local ones?
Well, the US dollar speaks just about everywhere. But these days, most places just take credit cards, you know, so yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think everywhere, the only place we had an issue was Galapagos, actually. Remember that, Eddie? None of the cash machines worked.
No, there's nothing much really works very well in the Galapagos.
Stack of cards to find. Anybody amongst the fleet got a card that works? Right, we need to borrow some money off you.
The thing is, when you arrive in the Galapagos, you put your card in the machine, and you're an instant millionaire. Yeah, because you've got to read the amount of zeros, because you can be out by a factor of 1,000 quite easily if you're not careful. Yeah. It's one of these currencies that goes. It's like the oldest Turkish lira, when there was like several rows of zeros almost like on the notes. So just be careful of that.
Yeah, absolutely. But as Eddie says, it's absolutely true that, you know, credit cards in most places is absolutely fine.
Oh, just on that, I think Isabella in the Galapagos, I don't think there are any cash machines there, even to this day. So you need cash there. But I think there's a hotel on the front, which I struggle to remember the name of just now, that does take credit cards. So if you run out of cash and you're starving, go to the hotel for some food, and you can buy yourself some lunch there. But there are no cash machines in Isabella. That's it. Yeah, the last stop in the Galapagos, since you mentioned that.
Yeah, no problem. Thanks, Eddie. Okay, Ali, any other questions?
No, I think we're about there now, Paul, I think.
Okay, fantastic. Well, hopefully you guys have been inspired, and we would love you to join us for our next Oyster World Rally webinar. We are circumnavigating the planet virtually in this space. So the next one will be on the 20th of May, and we're going to be arriving in Australia. So we're going to be going, doing the trip from Vanuatu across the top of New Caledonia through the Great Barrier Reef and into Australia, and talking about the beautiful Whitsundays, Airlie Beach, sailing north to Cairns and over the top to Darwin, and watching out for saltwater crocodiles on the way. So we would love you to join us for that. So keep an eye on your inbox, and we will send you the registration links in due course. And as again, just to say that if you've been inspired this evening and are interested in joining us for a future Oyster World Rally, we would love to speak to you. So just get in touch via the website and speak to the team, and we're here to ask any questions. Now, we're all going to turn our videos off now, and we're going to leave you with a nice little film, which is about the other Oyster World Rallies that's been. So you'll meet some of the previous owners that have done this adventure of a lifetime. So thank you so much to the team, to Ali, to Eddie, to Millie, and thank you to you guys for joining us on this evening and spending some time with us. So we hope to see you soon, and we will see you very, very soon. Take care and see you soon. Thank you.
The minute I heard about the first Oyster World Rally, I knew it was something that I wanted to do. And the more stories we heard about the first one, the more determined I was.
It is a life-changing experience. The people you meet, the remote places, you know, it's fabulous. You will not get there as a tourist. It's impossible.
But I wouldn't have missed it for the world. It's absolutely once in a lifetime opportunity and experience. You know, you could go on forever really saying how wonderful it was.
Have you ever dreamed about sailing around the world? If so, this could be your time to embark on this voyage of a lifetime. The Oyster World Rally was created to enable you to safely circumnavigate the world with your oyster. We start in Antigua in the Caribbean before heading west to transit the Panama Canal, and from here we'll sail out to the Galapagos Islands, then crossing the Pacific over to French Polynesia, to the Marquesas, through the Tuamotus, to Tahiti and Bora Bora, before heading west over to Tonga and Fiji and Vanuatu, taking in the stunning South Pacific Ocean. From here we'll head over to Australia, through the Great Barrier Reef to Mackay, before sailing north to the beautiful Whitsundays, up to Cairns, over the north to Darwin, before sailing up to Indonesia, and then heading west and sailing slightly south out to the Cocos Keeling Islands, before crossing the Indian Ocean all the way over to the beautiful islands of Mauritius and Reunion. From here we'll head west to Durban, before sailing south and around the Cape of Good Hope to Cape Town. From here we'll head north up the South Atlantic to St Helena and Ascension Island, before crossing back across to Fernando de Noronha, and then sailing north all the way to Antigua to complete your circumnavigation. So that's it, 24,000 miles around our planet, sailing through the most stunning cruising locations in the world, all fully supported by a professional shore team who will follow you every step of the way. So the question is, are you ready to embark on this voyage of a lifetime?
Don't hesitate, because you probably won't get another chance. There's one life, live it.